Let's begin.
Hey there, my fellow pasta people. Ready to get back to the terror and what the...
Hello, children. It's been such a long time since we spent time together in the cellars.
Looks like we're going to have to interrupt this week's scheduled upload for an update of utmost importance. So keep an eye out for teddy bears and settle yourselves in for 1999 High Definition.
Alright, so I was honestly hoping this was all over. I know now that it will likely never be over. I stepped into this mire of deceit, hidden intentions, and malevolent purposes almost 2 years ago to the date. I have deliberated all that has happened to me since, and yet this curse hangs over my head like a hex, created by my own design. As always, let me start at the beginning. My name is Sabian Lockhart, and I previously and currently work construction, with a small intermittent period of 6 months in between as an assistant bank manager. I liked wearing a suit every day to work, but the pay was meager, and a career in finance is not something I really desired. In order to meet the requirements of my monthly bills, I have gone back to work construction. Unfortunately, I now work nights, third shift drywall, rehabbing an operational grocery store during its primary off hours, working from evening till early morning. I have a sunset panorama to behold on my drive in, and a sunrise on the way home. This took some getting used to, especially while attending university through this transition. I stated in my very first post regarding my experiences with Investigation of the Story 1999 that I had just recently graduated with a 4-year degree in psychology. Shortly after, I enrolled for a master's degree in management, obtained this past February. Now, I attend for a doctorate in psychology, something I've always wanted to do, but it consumes most of my free time. Now, before I move forward, I'd like to address a few things, namely some comments and questions posted in the comments sections of my other previous updates. For instance, some of you want to know where this story is going. Honestly, I don't know, because this isn't a story. This shit is really happening to me, and I wish it weren't. Others have mentioned in a recent reposting of The Terrifying Truth that my name kind of ruined the story for them, that it sounds more like an OC than an actual name. Here's the thing. When I was 15, I had computer class and some internet literacy training in school. This was in the very early days of what would be known as Web 2.0, the transition of web capabilities to facilitate increased file sharing and the like. With the internet still in its infancy, my instructor informed our class to formulate a web alias, an alternative name completely contrasting our real names, to be used on the internet as a form of protection via anonymity. As you probably have guessed by now, I eventually arrived at the name Sabian Lockhart. It's now over 20 years later, and this persona of mine has become something more of a personal quirk or novelty. So, while my name is not my actual name, it's more than simply the construct at an attempt of an original character. It's personal to me. It's part of who I am. That other half of myself that exists in cyberspace, But yes, when boiled down, it's a simple alias. That goes for the names Sociopathic Pasta and L.W.Suton as well, for any of you left wondering. One of those is more of an OC than Sabian Lockhart, the other, my pen name. Now, you may be asking yourselves, who would go to such lengths to hide their identity and /or why? Well, there's a few reasons, but one of the more primary, speaking for itself in the paragraphs to come, and the deliberations I have provided for you previously. So, why am I telling you this all now? Well, I'll get back to that later. First, let me tell you what has led me to this point. As most of you know, this started with the terrifying truth in which my investigations into 1999 revealed more than I thought I would find. Subsequent stories have been produced that has followed a swath of fear, deceit, regret, and reflection along the way, comprising 5 updates to the original terrifying truth and the tragedies that have occurred since then. This will be my 6th. To tell you the truth, I'd rather not be writing this, but I know I must. It's more than an obligation now. Much more. As I stated previously, I now work 3rd shift, 9-hour nights drywall construction. To top it off, I write for my YouTube channel and attend college for a doctorate degree. Time is so very limited as of late. But I am proud to say, I excel at time management and succeeding in all areas of my life right now. The eye before the storm, I guess. I currently work from 9 p.m. until 6:30 a.m., with a 45-minute commute each way to and from work. I generally sleep from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., give or take, all to scramble my affairs in order and get ready to leave by 8 o'clock to do it all again. Well, a few days ago, a user who I will not name here for reasons I'll divulge in a moment, emailed me in regards to my 1999 investigations. The subject read, 1999. The text within is as follows. Hey Sabian, you don't know me, but my name is... I am very interested in the case of 1999 and would love to help in any way I can and get all the information needed to bring this sicko to justice. I've recently found a video of Booby on Vimeo, and I'm not entirely sure it's real, but it's the Playing with Scissors episode. I'm skeptical, but believe me, I've watched a lot of horror movies to know what's fake and what isn't. I've also seen real pictures of accidents, and let me tell you, it looks surprisingly real. Either it's real, or it's a good fake, I'll tell you that. I hope I'm not wasting your time with this. I just want clarification on everything and want to know why, and help in any way I can. I've also emailed returnthebee@hotmail.com to see if I can get a lead of any kind. I'll keep you posted on that. But anyway, here's the video. Booby, playing with scissors. Below was a link to the video, clickable and playable within the same window. Obviously, I was curious. I mean, I've received a ton of emails before with such like material, and most is amusing at best. Man, I wish I had more foresight. I wish I had listened to all the people who have been trying to warn me of what I may discover. But hey, too little too late. That's what they say, right? I moved the cursor over the play button and proceeded to click on it with my mouse. It immediately started. No title, no music, nothing. It was typical of most booby footage. My first thought was how they had gotten the description of the video correct. A left hand resided at the far right of the screen. It was still, and a bow was tied around one of its fingers. A pair of scissors lay on a red table. Just in front of it, the large, heavy-duty, shear-like scissors that are used to cut fabric, the kind teachers had back in school that students were never allowed to use. The camera slowly panned to the left, and the video jump cut to a scene where there were now 2 hands, one on the right with the bow, now dancing back and forth playfully. The one on the left knew. No bow tied around its finger, just a hand. Another left hand. The scissors were now placed right in front of the new bowless hand, and it opened and spoke, like the now iconic booby episodes described by Elliot.
"Scissors are very dangerous, kids, so hold them safely,"
he said, his tone rising and dialogue spoken like that of baby talk. Booby, the bowless hand, then reached down for the scissors in front of him. He picked them up and began to open and shut them, moving them back and forth and up and down. The resulting clipping sounds underscored just how real they were, metal gleaming in the ambient lighting. It was sadistic to say the least. But this was nothing. I'd like to stop here. God, would I like to stop here. But that's not quite what I mean. I want to give you a warning after a brief explanation. I was going to include this video with this story as part of the visuals while I describe it. I instantly thought that to be a really bad idea. One, YouTube would certainly flag it, reinforced by deliberations to follow. The other, well, in all honesty, it would be cruel. I know some of you might not understand this. Hell, at one point, I thought I wanted to see this. When Elliot revealed he didn't have the intestinal fortitude to watch the final episode of Mr. Bear's Cellar, I was highly disappointed. I truly didn't understand. But after watching this shit... I mean, Elliot described seeing this as a kid, and went further to discover and visually consume much more. I have absolutely no desire to go any further. I did not understand, just like the way some of you don't understand how I could withhold from you now. Trust me, I'm sparing you. But for those of you still stubborn of persuasion, I've decided to include the audio of this horrid abomination as I describe it. For those of you who cannot bear it, please skip ahead. You will only miss out on the truly macabre and demented. Nothing I suggest you subject yourself to anyway. This is your last warning. So, if you listen on, only to find yourself offended and somehow feeling defiled, please don't flag me. I have given you many chances. For all the rest of you that remain, here it goes. The video jump cuts again, and the scissors are once again on the table in front of Booby, only now he was holding a smaller hand by the wrist. There was a thumping coming from what was obviously under the table, the person attached to the hand that was Booby, clearly fighting with something, and with now discernible, muffled cries of what is clearly a child. It is easy to correlate what he was struggling with. The hand struggled to get free, the table bobbling back and forth in its frantic fight, but Booby would not release the hand. A third hand, the right hand of the man playing Booby, came into view and picked up the scissors from the table. The child's cries increased and became more panicked and desperate. The scissors opened and the child began releasing the sound of simultaneous crying and screaming, happening all at once. It sounded like the epitome of misery. The scissors clasped onto the thumb, and screaming began to overtake the wailing. I felt my stomach turn sick. The sound was too real. The child began to sob as the very realistic scissors clamped onto his or her thumb. It sounded like a whimper and a growl all at once, muffled by something sinister covering his or her mouth beneath the table. The scissors made the slight sound that shears make when opened and shut, and I could hear the elastic snap of skin. Subtle, but there. The video cuts again to a slightly different angle, Booby having shifted his position to allow him more leverage to attack the child's thumb, the metal knives of the scissors now sawing in up and down small motions, like cutting cardboard or paper. The child was screaming furiously with short bursts of intense sobs. That screaming If you're a parent, you know exactly what I mean. A child, no matter if they're an infant, 6, 12, or beyond, has a certain way of screaming. Hungry screams, angry screams, and then those painful screams. It's an intense shrieking and wailing with a hint of fear and despair within. This sound will make a parent run to their child. It's the fuel that allows mothers to lift entire cars off their wounded and trapped children. I shut off the video. I tried 2 or 3 more times to get through it, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. I love the internet. I've been to the deep web. I've traveled Silk Road, but I've never seen anything like this. This was snuff. I discussed this with those living in my house, my wife, children, and the newest addition to our family, a teenager named Danny who needed a place to stay. Everyone who watched it turned it off as well. No one I shared it with could get through it. I sent the user who had given me the link an email, asking them if I could use their name in this update or if they would like to remain anonymous. They have yet to respond, so I figure anonymous is the safer bet. If they want me to disclose their identity at a later date, I will do as such. Unfortunately, before I knew it, it was time to go to work. I kissed my wife goodbye, said my farewells to my children, which now include Danny, and off to work I went. A good friend of mine and narrator, Angel Soto, has been touched by the desire for investigation of Mr. Bear and was happy to help me while I was working. She provided to me the name of the person who uploaded the sinister video, showed me a few pictures of a YouTube channel that they owned, and attempted to find his email. No success there. I couldn't put this shit out of my mind. 9.5 hours later, which seemed like an eternity, and I was on my way home. My mission? To do some research on the uploader of Fabian Rodriguez and get through that accursed episode of Booby. I knew I would have to explain it to all of you eventually, and would have to watch it in its entirety to meet my obligation. Fabian Rodriguez has a few 1999 related videos on his channel, some Mr. Bear episodes, which are well made, but the costume looks a bit too unlike a bear. The person playing him seems to be a child as well, but in all, well made, and attention to the details that Elliot described in his story, each episode beginning with a screenshot of a TV in which an attached VCR has just had a tape inserted. Fabian also had a couple of Booby episodes on his YouTube channel as well, each starting with an intro that includes children's hands, 5 of them, all displayed over top of a red tablecloth background, different than the one in the Playing with Scissors episode I had yet to view in its entirety. Each hand had a letter on the back of it, one of the letters for spelling out Booby when all hands were placed on the tabletop together. There's children's laughter in the background and is again well made. The Booby episode uploaded to Vimeo had no such intro. There is also a Soup and Spoon episode too. I've actually seen that one and liked it a lot. I searched for an email, a Facebook, anything, but to no avail. I read the comments left on some of the videos and noticed many people had asked the same question I wanted to ask, if he made these videos himself. Fabian has yet to reply to any of these comments. Still, I went to the channel's discussion section and posted my question there. I have yet to receive a response. Fabian did explain in the comments of one of his vids that the Playing with Scissors video kept getting flagged upon upload, following a provided link to the Vimeo site for those who wished to watch it. Like I said, if I were to show it here, this post would be flagged and removed, resulting in my channel being striked. Again, I will warn you all here, because this is when I returned my attention back to that Vimeo upload. As I describe it here, I will once again include the accompanying audio rip. I started the video once again, watching up to the point I had kept turning it off. with a grimace on my face and a nausea in my gut. The video proceeded with its jump cuts, and once again, the child was screaming in a muffled agony I dare not imagine. The skin was filleted up now in front of where the scissors were and had been sawing. There was no spurting of blood, but only a very slight ooze of red. The hand was trying to withdraw, but unable. The child's cries growing a little softer, accompanied by a gurgling which I assumed to be his saliva within his bound mouth. The booby hand noticeably squeezed tighter, and the scissor hand now vibrated as it clenched, seemingly irritated in its inability to cleave through the bone beneath. The child grunted as he or she screamed furiously, like the sound of someone trying to take a shit but pushing too hard. It was the sound of strain. The child was in a point between fight and flight, when you can do neither. The scissors were clamped and shaking violently at this point, and the child's cry changed to a portrayed anger. And then, the sounds of fighting back, like he was trying to bite at whatever was covering his mouth. The video cut once again to show Booby's girlfriend, the hand with the bow, take a hold of the child's hand. Again, the child's screaming became frantic and dreadfully desperate. I felt like I wanted to cry. This was something so deplorable. There is no word in existence that can accurately describe it. The scissors Booby was still holding now clamped onto the thumb at a different angle. The child fought against his captors and reeled back as he or she let out shrieks that were more intense than before. So much more intense. Whoever this child was, I just wanted it to stop. I just wanted it to stop. But I forced myself to move on, keep watching, and listening. Blood was now clearly seeping from the wounds. I've seen faces of death, and I'm also quite knowledgeable regarding latex effects, and can usually distinguish between the two with great accuracy. This shit was real. The child's wails became more frequent now, one after another, over and over, loud, terrible. Booby then moved the scissors lower down the thumb, closer to its base, revealing the freshly torn flesh and gore that were the result of the deep wound where the scissor blades had just been clamped. The child sobbed in a way I just cannot find the words for. It was fearful, agonizing, pleading. The child's hand tried to get away once again. The sobbing grew even louder, and then a crunch. Blood streaked the scissor blades, contrasted by the metallic reflection of where they had been spared the liquid crimson. The hand shook violently, but it was no use. Whoever had this child had them restrained well. Shrieking turned to straight-out crying, a hopeless kind of sobbing that one makes when there is nothing that can be done. The blood leaked onto the red table, not spurting or spouting, but more like falling, not dripping or streaming, just falling to the table, as if gravity's one intent was to pull all the blood from the child to the top of that table continuously until he was drained. The hand was pulling so hard now. All three larger hands were having trouble keeping it over the table, but this did not stop the scissors. The video jump cuts again to the hand now almost flat on the table, the scissor blades open and inching closer to the thumb. The screaming then turned to a high-pitched, like that of squealing when the scissors once again reached the thumb. More crunching, louder this time, much louder, but still not enough to cleave the bone. The hand is then left to its own devices, only being held by Booby's girlfriend. The hand flapped around wildly, like a fast, waving one, but in the opposite forward and backward direction, highlighting the amount of pain that must have been felt at that time. The hand stopped for an instant, and shiny, sticky blood ran down the length of the palm, past the wrist. The video makes one last jump cut to show the mangled meat still clinging to the bone of the thumb, the blood still fresh and glistening. The screaming had stopped, and the hand was limp. The video just ends. I know that time can appear to move differently, depending on perspective. My lunch break going by so fast, I feel like I barely have time to eat. The rest of the night dragging on slower than molasses on a cold Canadian winter night. But those 2.5 minutes, the length of that video. I never knew 2.5 minutes could stretch on so very long. I thought it would never be over, but now that it was time for me to finally get some well-needed rest. For those of you horror hounds still drooling for more, wanting to watch it in all its horrific glory for yourselves, send me an instant message via Skype or Facebook, or an email indicating as such. I'll reply you the link. But like I've said, and tried to make so very clear, trust me, you don't want to. Anyway, suffice to say, I didn't sleep easy. I drifted off to sleep eventually, with a single notion concrete in my mind. I must find out the meaning of the message I retrieved from the fallen down house a few months ago. I have to do what I can to stop this monster from hurting anyone else. I wanted to know what the fuck was going on. I finally drifted off, but with a newfound resolution for digging for the truth. Slumber was fitful. I had nightmares that seemed to top most of any I have ever had. I woke up frequently and always in a sweat. By the time it was ready to hit the road for work that night, I was exhausted. Still, I have things to do, a life to care for, and my wife and I were engaged in some planning before I left for work. See, for my doctorate degree, I have to fly out of state once every year so as to complete an in-residency program over the course of a weekend. This creates a need for securing flights, a hotel room, and other travel necessities. My wife has never been on a plane, and her coming with me, she and I were both very excited. We were actually searching landmarks near our hotel when I noticed something. Something significant in the lower center of the page on Google Maps underneath the name of the flagged location. Now, I have played around with that odd message tied to that little stuffed bear in that abandoned home, left there and meant for me. I've converted the letters to numbers, arranged them differently like an anagram, everything I could think of. Nothing substantial resulted. But at the bottom of that page was a dual set of numbers. It was a set of coordinates. The length of the numbers reminded me of some of my results that I had gained while playing around with that obscure message. I retrieved a letters to numbers diagram from Google and converted all letters in the text to numbers. Then added the decimal point 2 digits in. The result was this: 42.658672 minus 74.025118. I did this, of course, after my wife and I were done fantasizing about our trip, and I didn't get to plug it in till I got to work using an app on my phone to bring up Google Maps. When I searched using these coordinates, Google quickly replied with a pinpoint location. I zoomed out a bit to identify the region, and my heart seemed to go still, the breath taken right out of my lungs. John Boyd Thatcher Park, only 20 minutes or so from where I live. This was certainly it. It was way too coincidental to be a false conclusion. I had to bide my time, for it was only Wednesday, and on a 4-day work week, I would have no conceivable time off until after the following night. Whatever waited for me out in the forest of that vastly large state park would have to wait just a little longer. I spent that night and the night after doing what I always do when I work drywall, listening to playlists of creepypastas, The irony that I was doing what I was doing essentially 2 years ago, and now doing again while all this is resurfacing, was a cosmic pun that did not escape my perceptions of circumstantial context. A cruel twist of fate, as it were. I didn't know what I would find up there, but now that I have, I am undecided in whether or not I should have ever have searched at all. But that can only be answered by discovering whether or not ignorance would be enough to save me. Somehow, I doubt it. The day finally came. I had worked through Thursday night and into Friday morning, and as luck would have it, they let us go a little early. The air was so thick through the night that water vapor could literally be seen in the air like a fog, the type of night not uncommon to Floridians, but experienced only occasionally in the month of August for us upstate New Yorkers. It was formidably challenging to breathe. At least I work indoors, and in air conditioning to boot. As the morning gave way to a dawn trying to break through heavy clouds, it began to rain. Not heavily, not enough to break the humidity, but enough to dampen everything under a particularly gloomy sky. Again, as I got into my truck with intentions of making a stop on my way home, the irony of the environmental context was duly noted. Now, Thatcher Park is kind of on the way, creating only an extra 10 minutes of driving time if I go home over the mountains. I didn't mind. The back roads in New York flow much better than the highways anyway, and I hate New York drivers. Trust me, if you don't know personally, take my word for it. They suck. With my thoughts lost in what may be waiting for me there, it didn't seem too long before the winding roads led me to my destination, about halfway home. The first thing I had noticed as I got closer to the nearest pull-off spot to the point on my now GPS app was a lack of vehicles. It was early, it had been raining, and I didn't expect to see too many cars anyway, but I knew that if any had been spotted in the proximity, that extra caution or an abortion of mission may be in order. No one in sight, I pulled into the drive I needed to park my truck. Opening the door and stepping out under a cloud-covered morning, I scanned the area to see nothing but picnic tables, grills, and fire pits for cooking, and the woods that embraced the area in a wraparound perimeter aside from the road behind me. The point on the map, coming as no surprise, indicated the deep woods beyond the public picnic area. I sighed, lit up a cigarette, and began walking, my phone in hand. As my location updated and my movements progressed, my location inched closer and closer to the uncovered coordinates. The air was hazy with fog due to the barometric pressure, and the forest was quiet, besides that of occasional chirp of a morning bird in the distance. Everything seemed surreal, as if I were dreaming or watching through another's eyes. It was like living a horror movie. I wondered how the ending may turn out. I guess I still do. Finally, I reached it. I was standing in the exact spot the message had indicated. There were no signs, no stuffed bears, abandoned playthings, or anything sinister that I could see. Nothing but trees, rocks, and some stones covered with leaves. I was disheartened. I looked, walked a few feet in every direction. There was nothing there. One part disappointed, one part relieved, I turned back in the direction of my truck. As I began my walk, I gave one last glance in the direction of those leaf-covered rocks, and from my passing angle, I noticed something I hadn't earlier. They were stacked. Flat stones stacked on top of one another. Curious, I altered my trajectory and moved closer to them. The stack was arranged in a small half-circle of sorts. I grew up in the woods. I've built many woodland fires for camping excursions, and I instantly recognized what it was, even before I had removed the leaves blanketing the stones and the center around which they were arranged. It was a fire pit. Small, crudely made, very much unlike those built by the park only yards away, but still, to me, it was identifiable as soon as I had taken in its formation. I frantically began sweeping away the fallen debris of overhead trees, revealing the smooth stone of the perimeter and the soot in the center. The leaves were damp and cold, as was the soot beneath, more of a soupy, muddy ash than soot at this point. Still, there was nothing there, only the remnants of a small fire long since burned away. Maybe I've been studying psychology too long. Maybe it's because it's what I would have done, but instinct told me to dig. Maybe I'd find something in the ash. Below the ash was another large stone. Hands caked black with wet charcoal and mud, I lifted it up and over to the side, the earth and ash heaving to one side as I did. My gawking, widening eyes stared down astonishingly at what they now beheld. I've always sucked at scavenger hunts and the like, so just to take in the fruits of my labor felt like a reward. A small, plastic coffee can was nestled purposefully in the ground beneath the stone, now partially covered with caked-on dirt. It was the smaller size of coffee can you get in a convenience store or a gas station. My dirty, sopping hands groped and fumbled at the thing, trying to release it from its burial place. With success, I held it up, wasting no time in removing the lid. 2 perfectly dry items resided inside. One, a picture which I had yet to scrutinize, and the other, a piece of paper that I would soon discover to be a note or a letter. When I lifted the photograph, I actually didn't recognize it at first. It was a picture of a family. A baby, no more than 6 months old, was being cradled in the arms of her mother. The photo cut and cropped in such a way that the woman's head had been removed. On the other side of the baby stood the father. His eyes had been seemingly scratched out, marring the image of the face and creating a disturbing imagery that filled me with a dreadful sensation that words will fail to fully describe. It was me. The man in the photograph was me. The baby was my now 6-year-old daughter, the woman, my wife. This picture was taken ages ago, back when her and I rented a small apartment in the city. How in the hell did someone get this? I know some of our stuff had been left behind during the frequent moving we've done in our recent past, but the logistics are still inconceivable to me. Shaking, I set the picture down and unfolded the paper. What follows is what was provided on the page in a scribbled, almost unreadable text.
Hello, my dear Sabian. If you're reading this, you are as clever as I thought you to be. Sorry for all the running around, but it's important I stay hidden for now. I think it's unfair for you to ask all the riddles and have all the fun. Here's one for you. He comes in 9s, through the 9s, and is born of the 9. Spin this yarn with haste of time, or this child will be mine. Then again, maybe you like to watch. Woohoo! Good luck, my favorite little friend. 100 fuzzy hugs, Mr. Bear.
That closing, following those despicable words, it almost seemed to mock me with a sinister and cynical intent. I clutched the paper tight in my hand, so much so that it crumpled in my grasp. I didn't run, but walked swiftly to my truck. I thought about all I had found on that dismal ride the rest of the way home. I pondered the meaning of that note over and over, but always reaching the same conclusion. What I got out of that odd and threatening letter is that if I don't continue to tell this story, don't continue to investigate and divulge my discoveries, that he will take my daughter. So, when I say I don't want to be reporting this, I mean it. But when I say I have to, that I have new obligations to meet, I mean that as well. I had pondered this before, and believe I've mentioned it in the past. As long as I keep telling his story, my story, he will likely leave me alone. But this leaves me with a conundrum, a resignation that cuts my soul to the quick with fear. In order to tell more, I must discover more, and this leads me to believe that this is not over, that he will continue to feed me devious and malevolent tidbits as time passes. Whether it's the same Mr. Bear from Elliot's story or some sicko copycat or fan, after watching that playing with scissors video, I know now it doesn't really matter. The person is stalking me. An element from a story long believed to be fiction or the fabrication of a monster through its devices. It's inconsequential. A monster is a monster. And if he's half as malignant as the creator of the video I described earlier, it makes no difference his origin, for a truth of such shakes me to my very core. If any of you have had similar experiences, remember anything odd from your childhoods that revolve around this obscure story of Elliot's, or a related experience all your own, please send me an email. I will leave a link below. There is only one thing to help put my mind at ease. Sabian. He used the name Sabian, just as with the note attached to that odd bear in that dilapidated home. He may know an awful lot about me, enough to scare the hell out of me, but maybe he doesn't know as much as I fear he might. After all, he's using an alias of mine, indicating that maybe he doesn't know my real name. Maybe. I suppose I'll leave off here, as there's no more to tell, but something tells me that that's going to change, and I feel as though sooner than later. Until then, this is Sabian Lockhart, signing out.
Well, there you have it. It looks like I'm stuck now, and things may be more serious than you realize. But in the jest of good entertainment, I'd like to lighten the mood with a little fictional mayhem next week, so make sure to schedule next Saturday into your horror planner. And until next time, Pasta fans, keep two bony fingers crossed for yours truly. I just might need it.
Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.